Great, thank you. And a common theme throughout this is essentially how we can teach learners, but also equip teachers as well with how to use AI effectively to support learning. And that's the next question. So how can we encourage learners to use that AI effectively and not just to be efficient or productive, which came up in the poll as a common theme of what learners are picking AI up to use it for. Let's start with you this time, Steve. Do you want to dive a bit into this?
Before we start, I am going to make a statement of my own bias. I am biased towards Microsoft products because I am the lead fellow for the North of England in their Microsoft Innovative Educator community. So if I talk a lot about Microsoft products and things in this particular bit, that's why. I think with our learners, we do need to explore topics and discussions with AI. So again, instead of them just looking at it for a single answer, we want them to discuss with AI and get a deeper, holistic understanding of the thing that they're looking for, and to understand that's how it's meant to be used. It's not meant to be used as a one-stop, fire it away, get your answer back, as I said earlier. But we also need to be creative with them. And the more creativity that you can get, the better. I don't know if you guys are active on Twitter. I refuse to call it X. But particularly around Microsoft Designer, this has got a prompt builder where you can put in fill in the blanks for it. So you can generate your prompt and then fill in the blanks. And people have used that to make Lego models of themselves, Minecraft characters of themselves, fantasy art of themselves, things like that, Funko Pops, all sorts of things like that, to really bring their creativity out and express themselves as people. And I think that's absolutely brilliant. And that sort of thing, that sort of structured building, it can teach somebody how to write a prompt because you've got the bare bones of it there already. They've just got to fill in the blanks for themselves. But it also opens their mind to, well, if I can do it to do this, what else can I get it to do? And then that gets people thinking about it and playing with it more. And Adobe's similar as well with its Adobe Firefly. That one, if you're trying to avoid any legal hot water, that's the one that they should use. Microsoft Designer, and I believe Canvas AI, but I'm not sure on this one, are looking across the web and looking at images from across the web and building it from whatever it finds. The Adobe one is trained solely on Adobe stock images. So they own the legal rights to all of the images that have been used to train their product. So if you're looking to avoid that ethical issue, Adobe's the way to go. On the image generation side of things. But we should be being creative. There's a school in Westminster, and with their year 8 students, they got them to create a collage in art class. And then in the IT class, they had to go on to, I think they used Midjourney for it, but they had to try and write a prompt that would create an image that matched the collage that they'd created. And they learned that they had to keep fine-tuning and fine-tuning and fine-tuning until you got some really close things between them. And that sort of thing is the sort of thing that we need to be encouraging. There's a lot of fear language around AI as well. It's always been, oh no, people assignments are going to be destroyed, people can't do essays anymore. Well, essay mills have been a thing for years. People writing essays for other people is such a big thing. It was in Black Panther 2 as a way of introducing a clever character because she was writing the essay for somebody else. So that's already been happening. The essay in that regards is already dead, long dead and gone. So we need to be more positive about it and about how it can embrace creativity. You can embrace ideation. And go that way with it with people.
That's really interesting. And Jessica, I know that you've got some notes down here about modeling that AI usage. How can you do that in a positive way?
Yeah, so I love what you just said, Steve, about the essay. I think I work with a lot of faculty in higher ed, and every time I come in to teach about AI, train on AI, the first question is, oh my gosh, they're all going to cheat. I don't know how to test my students anymore. They're all, and it's always funny because then my first question is, okay, have you put in your essay prompt into any sort of AI and seen what AI writes for your prompt? And then I tell them to go through that process with their students. So if you have a bad prompt, a bad essay prompt, obviously AI can write it. But I think most of them were shocked by the fake citations, one of them was a historical analysis of an earthquake in San Francisco, and AI made up this whole character about this fireman who saved everyone. And it sounded really cool, but it was not real. So I think I always love to tell teachers to model how to use it, or experts model how to use it. So say I'm going to draft an email, and I have AI write my first draft, and I show this to my students, I show this to my colleagues, and then what do I notice? What's off? What do I need to update? What's actually important to me? Is it my prompt? Is it what AI is giving me? And in higher ed or in school in general, how do we then model this usage? And then how do we fact check? How do we bias check? How do we make sure it's actually accessible to everyone? Do all of our students have access to AI, or is it just the higher paying versions that are better and give us better answers, right, than the free versions? Making sure that it's equitable for our students, that they all have access to these things. So I think when I talk about the importance of modeling, it's kind of sitting down as an expert and showing, like, in our field or in this task or in this objective, this is what it looks like to work with AI. And I think this is important, not just with AI, but with anything. I remember sitting down years ago now, before I started my dissertation, and my chair sat with me, and I saw him type and struggle and delete. And I was like, oh, in my mind, like, an expert writer just wrote and it was perfect the first time. But seeing the process of, like, you didn't like that paragraph and you deleted a whole paragraph and you wrote a new one and deleted it, like, oh, that's what the process is like. And I think modeling that process with AI with our students is crucial too, and showing, like, we don't just take what AI says and slap it anywhere. Just like with, if I read in a textbook that the XYZ happened, I would maybe see, like, what have other people said? Has that really happened? Was that the only perspective? What is the opposing perspective? What does that look like? And just like we do with textbooks or faculty or newspaper articles, how do we critically look at this? And I think Sammy talked about this and Stephen talked about this, like, that critical thinking piece is just as important as it ever was. And just like we had people write essays for us forever ago, now it's just more accessible for people. But then how do we ideate? How do we have it? Sometimes I've taken, like, introductions or abstracts and thrown it in and said, what questions do you still have about my article with this abstract? And then it'll say, like, oh, I don't understand this, and then it's like, oh, and I can take it with a grain of salt. I can be like, oh, it's because he's not an expert in my field. Or I can be like, oh yeah, that is a gap that I left in the conclusion. Maybe I'll reword it. So I think showing that it's a messy process is important, and modeling kind of that, just like you said, that critical thinking piece is really important.
I think that's great, and I do agree it is a messy process. You go back and forth, and before you sort of, and I think that's the beauty of using tools like AI, because they can help you sort of stream your thoughts to a point where they're most effective.